Have you ever witnessed a political earthquake so massive that it left seasoned analysts speechless and opposition leaders scrambling for explanations? Well, that's exactly what happened in Bihar during November 2025, and trust me, what I'm about to reveal will completely change how you think about Indian politics forever. On November 14th, 2025, Bihar delivered the most shocking electoral outcome in decades. The National Democratic Alliance didn't just win. They obliterated every prediction, every poll, and every expert analysis with a landslide victory that secured over 200 seats in the 243-member assembly. But here's the twist that absolutely no one saw coming. This wasn't just about the NDA's dominance. This was about the complete and utter collapse of what everyone thought was Bihar's political future. Picture this scenario. You're a political strategist who has spent months analyzing data, conducting surveys, and predicting outcomes. You've factored in every variable, every demographic shift, and every campaign promise. Then Election Day arrives, and everything you thought you knew gets thrown out the window. That's exactly what happened to political observers across India when Bihar's results started pouring in. The BJP emerged as the single largest party with 91 seats, while their alliance partner, JDU, secured 83 seats. But these numbers only tell half the story. What makes this victory truly unprecedented is the strike rate. The NDA achieved a remarkable success rate of over 70%. Meaning that out of every 10 seats they contested, they won 7. Their vote share crossed 45%, marking their highest performance since 2010 when they previously dominated with 206 seats. Prime Minister Narendra Modi thanked every NDA worker who worked tirelessly and took the development agenda directly to the people while countering every opposition narrative. But even Modi's celebration couldn't mask the sheer magnitude of what had just occurred. Political analysts described it as a tsunami that completely reshaped Bihar's electoral landscape, catching everyone from seasoned journalists to opposition leaders completely off guard. The most stunning aspect wasn't just the NDA's victory. It was the comprehensive demolition of alternatives that many believed represented Bihar's political future. Remember all those campaigns promising change? Remember all those rallies drawing massive crowds? Remember all those social media movements that seemed to capture the imagination of young Bihar? Well, they all crashed and burned in the most spectacular fashion imaginable. Let me introduce you to the biggest shock of this election. Prashant Kishore's Jan Suraj party, despite generating massive publicity and sky-high expectations, failed to win a single seat. Not one. Zero. Zilch. This wasn't just a political defeat. This was a complete rejection of everything Kishore represented and promised to the people of Bihar. Think about this for a moment. Kishore launched his Jan Suraj Padyatra on October 2, 2022, from Gandhi Ashram in Bhitiharwa, West Champaran. Over the next 2 years, he and his team visited more than 5,000 villages. He walked over 5,000 kilometers across Bihar, engaging with local communities and drafting what he called a 10-year development roadmap. This wasn't some casual political experiment. This was a meticulously planned, extensively researched political movement. At the party's launch, Kishore announced revolutionary provisions. He promised candidate selection through U.S.-style primaries. He guaranteed the right to recall legislators who failed to perform. He pledged that 90% of candidates would be first-time contestants, representing a complete break from traditional political dynasties. These weren't empty promises. These were carefully crafted policies designed to appeal to voters hungry for change. But here's where it gets absolutely mind-blowing. Despite all this preparation, all this grassroots engagement, all this media attention, the Jan Suraj party managed only a 3.5% vote share. Their massive padyatra failed to translate into booth-level strength. Their publicity campaigns couldn't convert enthusiasm into actual votes. Even though Kishore was described as a crowd puller at his rallies, that energy simply evaporated when voters entered polling booths. The irony becomes even more striking when you consider Kishore's own prediction. In multiple interviews, he confidently stated that Jan Suraj would win either less than 10 seats or above 150 seats, with nothing in between. He was betting everything on a polarized outcome. Instead, he got the worst possible result: complete rejection. But the electoral carnage didn't stop with Kishore's party. The opposition Mahagathbandhan faced its worst defeat in decades, with performances so shocking that they raised serious questions about their future viability as a political force. The Tejashwi Yadav-led RJD, which emerged as the single largest party in 2020 with 75 seats, managed to secure only 23 seats this time. That's not a decline. That's a political apocalypse. The Congress Party's performance was even more devastating. They won just 6 seats out of the over 50 they contested, losing deposits in most constituencies. This represents their second-worst performance in Bihar's electoral history, only marginally better than their 4-seat tally in 2010. Their vote share dropped to a pathetic 8.75%, barely improving from their disastrous 2010 showing. What makes these numbers even more shocking is the context. The opposition had spent months building narratives around voter suppression, electoral manipulation, and unfair practices. Congress leader Rahul Gandhi had launched his Voter Adhikar Yatra, specifically targeting the Election Commission's special intensive revision of electoral rolls. He accused the government and Election Commission of stealing votes, claiming that over 6 million voters had been unfairly removed from electoral rolls. The opposition narrative seemed compelling on paper. They argued that the special intensive revision disproportionately harmed minorities, women, and migrant workers. They claimed that in some constituencies, the number of deleted voter names exceeded victory margins from previous elections. In Simanchal, a Muslim-majority area, voter removals exceeded the state average, providing apparent evidence for their allegations. But here's the twist that nobody anticipated. Despite all these concerns, despite all the campaigns against alleged voter suppression, Bihar recorded its highest voter turnout since 1951. A remarkable 67.13% of eligible voters participated, representing an increase of 9.6 percentage points compared to the last assembly elections. Women and young voters emerged as vital pillars of support for the NDA, reflecting sustained engagement with grassroots welfare schemes and effective mobilization efforts. This creates a fascinating paradox. If voter suppression was really occurring, how did turnout reach historic highs? If electoral manipulation was widespread, how did opposition parties still manage to contest and campaign freely? The scale of the NDA's victory provides compelling evidence that the opposition's narrative about unfair practices failed to resonate with actual voters. The most dramatic individual contest occurred in Raghopur, the traditional stronghold of the Yadav family. For several hours during counting, Tejashwi Yadav was actually trailing behind BJP candidate Satish Kumar in what everyone considered an unshakable RJD fortress. The fact that even this safe seat became a nail-biting contest demonstrates the extent of the anti-incumbency wave against the RJD and the remarkable surge in NDA's popularity. Tejashwi ultimately won Raghopur with a margin of 14,112 votes, but the close contest sent shockwaves through political circles. If the RJD couldn't maintain comfortable margins in their family stronghold, what did that say about their support base across Bihar? The answer would become clear as results poured in from across the state. Across the state, Individual constituency battles revealed the depth of this political transformation in ways that aggregate numbers simply couldn't capture. Rama Nishad of the BJP delivered what can only be described as a crushing blow. Defeating Vikashil Insan Party's Bhogendra Sahni by an astronomical margin of 57,206 votes in Aurai. This wasn't just a victory. This was a statement that traditional opposition strongholds had completely crumbled under the NDA's relentless advance. But the surprises kept coming. Popular folk singer Maithili Thakur, representing the BJP, secured victory in Alinagar, leaving RJD's Binod Mishra trailing by over 8,000 votes. Think about the symbolism here. A cultural figure, someone known for her artistic contributions, decisively defeating an established political operator. This represents something far deeper than ordinary electoral politics. This suggests a fundamental shift in how Bihar voters perceive leadership and representation. The margins of defeat across multiple constituencies tell a story of complete electoral dominance that few predicted. In Digha, CPI-ML, Liberation candidate Divya Gautam lost to BJP's Sanjeev Chareja by a staggering 59,079 votes. In Sugauli, Janshakti Jantadal, candidate Shyam Kishore Chaudhary suffered defeat by 58,191 votes against LJP's Rajesh Kumar. These aren't narrow defeats that could be attributed to last-minute vote swings or tactical errors. These are comprehensive rejections of opposition candidates and their political platforms. Bihar Deputy Chief Minister Samrat Choudhary exemplified the NDA's commanding performance, winning Tarapur by 45,843 votes while securing 122,480 total votes. His nearest rival from the RJD managed only 76,637 votes, highlighting the massive gap between NDA and opposition performance levels. When senior leaders achieve such comfortable victories, it indicates deep-rooted support that extends far beyond surface-level campaign rhetoric. The most controversial victory belonged to Osama Shahab, son of deceased gangster-turned-politician Mohammad Shahabuddin, who won Raghunathpur despite fierce criticism from NDA leaders. His victory margin of 9,248 votes over JDU's Vikas Kumar Singh created uncomfortable questions about voter choices and political legacy. Top NDA leaders had criticized the RJD's decision to field Osama, alleging it indicated the return of jungle Raj politics. Yet even this contentious candidacy couldn't prevent the overall NDA wave from dominating Bihar's political landscape. What emerges from these individual contests is a pattern that defies conventional political wisdom. Voters weren't just choosing between candidates or parties. They were making a collective statement about the direction they wanted Bihar to pursue. The margins suggest that this wasn't a reluctant choice or a lesser evil decision. This was an emphatic endorsement of the NDA's governance model and a categorical rejection of opposition alternatives. The opposition's post-election analysis revealed the depth of their miscalculation. Rahul Gandhi termed the Bihar results as truly surprising and claimed they couldn't achieve victory in an election that wasn't fair from the beginning. But this response highlights a critical disconnect between opposition leadership and ground reality. When you lose by such massive margins across diverse constituencies, the problem isn't electoral fairness. The problem is message, strategy, and fundamental understanding of voter priorities. The Congress's Voter Adhikar Yatra, which Rahul Gandhi had positioned as a major campaign against alleged voter suppression, became a symbol of strategic failure. Despite extensive media coverage and grassroots mobilization efforts, the campaign failed to translate into electoral support. Voters seemed more concerned with development, governance, and stability than with procedural objections to electoral roll revisions. This disconnect becomes even more apparent when examining the demographic breakdown of NDA's victory. Women voters, who the opposition claimed were disproportionately affected by voter roll deletions, emerged as strong supporters of the alliance's young voters, supposedly alienated by traditional politics, overwhelmingly backed NDA candidates. These patterns suggest that opposition narratives about voter suppression and electoral manipulation were fundamentally misreading public sentiment. The scale of Prashant Kishore's failure deserves deeper analysis because it represents something unprecedented in modern Indian politics. Here was a political strategist who had successfully managed multiple high-profile campaigns, someone who understood data analytics and voter psychology better than most traditional politicians. His Jan Suraj party represented a carefully constructed alternative to conventional political formations, promising transparency, accountability, and grassroots democracy. Yet, despite 2 years of intensive groundwork, despite visiting over 5,000 villages, despite generating significant media attention and social media buzz, Kishore's party failed to win a single seat. This failure raises fundamental questions about the gap between political theory and electoral practice. It suggests that Bihar voters were looking for something different from what political consultants and analysts thought they wanted. The timing of Kishore's announcement that he wouldn't personally contest the elections may have sealed his party's fate. Leadership in Indian politics remains deeply personal. Voters want to know who they're actually empowering, not just what policies they're endorsing. By stepping back from direct electoral participation, Kishore may have undermined the very credibility he had spent 2 years building through his extensive padyatra across Bihar. But the broader implications extend far beyond individual political careers or party fortunes. This election has fundamentally altered the trajectory of Bihar politics and potentially influenced national political calculations. The NDA's comprehensive victory provides them with a massive mandate to pursue their development agenda without significant legislative obstacles. Opposition parties must now reconsider their strategies, messaging, and leadership structures if they hope to remain relevant in future electoral contests. The international attention this election has generated reflects its significance beyond Bihar's boundaries. Political observers across South Asia are analyzing these results for insights into changing voter behavior, the effectiveness of different campaign strategies, and the evolution of democratic politics in diverse societies. The lessons learned here will likely influence political campaigns and electoral strategies across multiple states and potentially at the national level. What makes this victory particularly remarkable is its comprehensive nature across different regions, communities, and demographic groups. The NDA didn't just win in their traditional strongholds. They made significant inroads into areas previously considered opposition territory. This suggests a realignment of political loyalties that could have lasting implications for Bihar's political future. The most fascinating aspect of this electoral transformation lies in understanding what drove millions of Bihar voters to make such a dramatic shift in their political preferences. When you examine the data closely, a remarkable pattern emerges that challenges everything. Political scientists thought they understood about voter behavior in one of India's most politically complex states. Consider the mathematics of this victory for a moment. The NDA's 45% vote share might seem modest until you realize that in a multi-party democracy with numerous regional players, achieving such concentration represents extraordinary political consolidation. But the real story isn't just about vote share, it's about vote efficiency. The alliance converted their support into seats with surgical precision, suggesting a level of strategic coordination that caught opponents completely unprepared. The voter turnout figures reveal another dimension of this political earthquake. At 67.13%, Bihar recorded participation levels that surpassed every previous election since independence. This wasn't reluctant voting or tactical participation. This was enthusiastic democratic engagement on a scale that demolished opposition claims about voter suppression and electoral manipulation. When people want to vote, when they feel their voices matter, when they believe their choices will create meaningful change, they show up in unprecedented numbers. But here's where the story takes an even more intriguing turn. The demographic composition of this historic turnout tells us something profound about the changing nature of political mobilization in Bihar. Women voters didn't just participate. They became decisive factors in constituency after constituency. Young voters didn't remain apathetic or alienated. They emerged as enthusiastic supporters of the winning alliance. These patterns suggest that traditional assumptions about voter behavior and political engagement were fundamentally flawed. The opposition's response to these results provides perhaps the most revealing insight into their disconnect from ground reality. Rather than acknowledging the magnitude of their strategic failures, rather than recognizing the depth of their messaging problems, rather than accepting that voters had made a clear choice, opposition leaders doubled down on procedural objections and allegations of unfairness. This response demonstrates a dangerous inability to learn from electoral feedback. Rahul Gandhi's characterization of the election as unfair from the beginning reflects a mindset that views democratic outcomes through the lens of predetermined expectations rather than actual voter preferences. When your political strategy depends on claiming that elections are only legitimate when you win them, you've fundamentally misunderstood the nature of democratic competition. Voters don't care about your internal calculations or strategic assumptions. They care about results, governance, and leadership that addresses their daily concerns. The Congress Party's abysmal performance becomes even more striking when viewed against their historical role in Bihar politics. This wasn't just another electoral setback. This was the near-complete irrelevance of a party that once dominated Indian politics and maintained significant influence in Bihar for decades. Their 8.75% vote share represents more than statistical decline. It represents the erosion of political relevance in a state where they once commanded respect and wielded substantial power. The failure of the voter Adhikar Yatra deserves particular attention because it exemplifies how opposition parties misread public priorities. While Congress leaders focused on procedural concerns about electoral roll revisions, voters were evaluating governance performance, development outcomes, and leadership effectiveness. The disconnect couldn't be more apparent. Opposition politicians were fighting yesterday's battles while voters were making decisions about tomorrow's challenges. This brings us to one of the most significant implications of Bihar's electoral outcome. The comprehensive nature of the NDA's victory suggests that voters weren't just choosing between competing political parties. They were endorsing a particular vision of governance and development that transcended traditional political calculations. The alliance's success across diverse constituencies, different demographic groups, and varying regional contexts indicates broad-based satisfaction with their performance and confidence in their future plans. The international dimension of this story adds another layer of complexity to an already remarkable political narrative. Democratic elections in diverse societies like India provide valuable insights for political scientists, policymakers, and democratic institutions worldwide. The Bihar results offer lessons about campaign effectiveness, voter mobilization, and the relationship between governance performance and electoral success that extend far beyond state boundaries. Regional political parties across India are now reassessing their strategies and alliances based on Bihar's electoral outcomes. The comprehensive defeat of established opposition forces has created ripple effects that influence political calculations in multiple states. When a political earthquake of this magnitude occurs, it doesn't just reshape the immediate landscape. It alters the strategic thinking of political actors across the entire democratic system. So there you have it. Bihar, 2025 wasn't just an election. It was a complete rewriting of political reality that left experts scrambling to explain what they never saw coming. The NDA's tsunami victory, Prashant Kishore's spectacular failure, and the opposition's total collapse prove that sometimes democracy delivers shocks so massive they change everything we thought we knew about politics forever.